Hello and welcome. I'm a DEQ Materials Management Regional Specialist. Now let's move on to the waste prevention programs. There are 7 waste prevention program elements in RULE. If your city has a population of 10,000 or more, and the county also has a population of 100,000, you are required to implement a total of 3 of these waste prevention program elements. You must implement program element number 2 plus any 2 additional programs. If your city has a population over 50,000, you must implement a total of 5 of the waste prevention programs. You must implement program element number 2 plus any 4 of your choosing. Program element number 2 is required for any city that meets the population requirements. Here on the form is where we will indicate how many programs your city is required to do, whether it's 3 or 5. In addition, just so you know, elements number 2, 3, 4, and 5 all require that an implementation plan be submitted to DEQ for approval. So if you are a city required to do these elements, you should already have plans submitted to DEQ that we have approved. DEQ will use your plan when reviewing the Opportunity to Recycle report and compare them, as the programs you implement throughout the year should match what is in your approved plan. So, since each local government has specific plans on how they intend to implement these programs, today we will just go through each one of these programs and requirements just in general. So let's start with program number 2. This is required for all cities who are required to do any of these programs. This is a citywide educational waste prevention program that focuses on expanding education and promotion, that focuses on the benefits of generating less waste in terms of the reductions and material environmental impacts as part of the life cycle, including upstream impacts such as resource extraction and manufacturing. Education should also address how to generate less waste, how to reuse materials, and solutions to common challenges to waste prevention and reuse. This information must go out at least 4 times a year. Now, you can see there's some similarities here to the expanded education promotion program element and this one. If you are already sending messages out 4 times a year because of you've chosen to do expanded education and promotion, you can still use those same methods to reach your residents, but you just need to include this more specific waste prevention content to them. You don't have to do an additional 4. You just need to add more content as specified here. Once again, we've provided 4 boxes here for you to tell us how you're implementing these 4 programs and getting the information out 4 times a calendar year. You must also target at least one community or media event promoting waste prevention in your city. As mentioned before, you are required to have a plan approved by DEQ on file. If this is new to you and you do not have a plan yet, please reach out to your regional specialist and they can help you get that plan approved. Moving on to number 3. So 3 and 4 are very similar, except 3 is focusing a campaign targeting residential generators. What you need to do for this particular program is to build a campaign where you're targeting residential generators, but you want to focus on a toxic and energy-intensive material or a consumer purchasing practice. So this is a campaign where you pick one material or a purchasing practice, you build the campaign around that material, and then you focus that on residential generators. So this campaign should have multiple components, including different visual images and variations of core messages, and using a variety of different medias. The duration of the campaign cannot exceed 5 years. So every 5 years, you will have to choose a different material to focus on, and you will need to refresh your programming every 2 years. Performance measures, you will have to have performance measures that specify one or more outcomes that will be used to demonstrate how the campaign reached targeted audiences. So we've provided space here for you to tell us how your campaign looks. What is your focus? What is the material or purchasing practice that you have chosen? What is your campaign strategy? How are you reaching residents? What is your schedule to get that information out to the residents? What is the type of media you're using? Is it in a newsletter? Is it on the website? Is it Facebook? Is it on a city newsletter? What is the performance measure and outcome that you hope to achieve? And who is completing this activity? Now, moving on to 4, it is very similar to 3, except it focuses specifically on commercial generators instead of residential generators. So for this, you do the same thing. You would need to choose a toxic and energy-intensive material or consumer purchasing practice to build a campaign around. The campaign cannot exceed 5 years, and it must be refreshed every 2 years. Once again, very similar to number 3, except here you are focusing on commercial generators. We have provided space for you to tell us how your campaign will look. Moving on to program number 5. This is an education program in schools. So in order to meet this program, you need to provide waste prevention and reuse education program in elementary and secondary schools. The education should increase the knowledge about actions that support waste prevention and reuse and identify at least one specific waste generation behavior or practice targeted for change and barriers to that change. This program requires that you reach 5% of elementary and secondary students attending public schools within an area served by a local government each year. Or if your program spans 2 years, you can attempt to reach 10% of the students. Here we have provided boxes for you to tell us how you are reaching students. 1, which group of classes are you targeting? What grade? Next, what number of students did you reach? There should be 5 or 10%, depending on if your program is 1 or 2 years. How did the program engage the students? Were you doing classroom presentations? Were they assemblies? Were they after-school programs? How were you reaching these students? What waste generating behavior did you focus on to change? What was your implementation schedule? How often were you in the classrooms? What were the performance measure outcomes? And who completed this activity? Once again, you are required to have a plan for this program as well. Moving on to program element number 6. Now we're shifting gears from waste prevention to reuse. This program requires that you provide waste-shed funding, city or waste-shed funding, or infrastructure to support and promote and sustain reuse, repair, leasing, and sharing efforts. So this could be providing funding or to provide infrastructure. So a local government needs to identify whatever funding or infrastructure support they are going to provide that supports reuse, repair, and leasing activities. Next, the support provided needs to be provided annually unless a local government is providing funding for multiple years. So you want to do it on an annual basis, or you could do it, your program can be for multiple years. If a local government has chosen to use direct funding, there is a formula that you need to use. There is a funding amount you need to hit. So that funding would need to be no less than 17 cents per local government resident for your jurisdiction with a population up to 100,000 in population, and $17,000 plus 10% per local government resident above $100,000 in population. If you had chosen to provide infrastructure support to comply with this requirement of this section, the support must result in reuse, repair, or leasing sharing opportunities that are provided continuously or at least 1 day a year for every 50,000 people in population. We also want you to provide education, of course, on this program. Residents need to know what these programs look like. If you are providing funding, that could look like grants if you're providing money. So for grant opportunities for reuse, repair, and leasing activities. If you're providing infrastructure, that could look like providing a building for your reuse activities, or providing a truck, or even hosting a reuse fair or some sort of reuse event. Moving on to number 7. This is providing technical assistance for reuse, repair, and leasing of materials and activities. If you choose this, you'll need to identify what type of technical assistance you are providing to support reuse, repair, and leasing and sharing activities in your area. Now, technical assistance could look something like providing staff time to host a reuse event, or promoting reuse opportunities in your local government. That could be promoting reuse opportunities on a website, or if your community has a reuse guide that lists the locations where people can reuse materials, that would also count. A local government can partner with another entity to implement this program if they'd like. But if they do that, they are required to have an intergovernmental agreement saying that this entity will meet the requirements specified here in rule. Here, please tell us how you're promoting that program. Lastly, moving on to food rescue program. This requires that your city or watershed support food rescue program that diverts to residents food that would otherwise be composted or disposed. You are only required to do 2 of these 4 elements to meet this requirement. So one thing you could do to meet this requirement would be to review local health ordinances or other local government regulations that may create regulatory barriers to food rescue, identifying regulatory barriers to food rescue and implementing solutions to those barriers. Next, you could choose to provide funding. So this could be grants or payments on behalf of organization for equipment, vehicles, or building space. This also has a formula that you will need to use. It would be 17 cents per local government unit resident for your jurisdiction with a population up to 100,000, and $17,000 plus 10 cents per local government unit residents above 100,000. So if you want to provide funding, it has to meet this money threshold. Next, you could provide infrastructure support for providing, such as providing space for rescued food, loan vehicles for food transport. If you do provide infrastructure, you do need to provide this continuously or at least 1 day per year for every 50,000 residents. Next, you could provide technical assistance to help promote food rescue. This could be to convene meetings to assist in developing a food rescue program. You could promote the food rescue program on the local government's website. And lastly, you could once again partner with someone else to do this work on your behalf, but it would require for you to have an intergovernmental agreement with this entity to make sure that they are meeting all of these requirements. Once again, we have provided a space here for you to tell us if you are going above and beyond the requirements that are in rule. We'd like to hear about any extra things that you are doing. Once again, please don't forget to have a city official sign this form before you submit it to DEQ. Thank you so much for listening today. Please contact your regional specialist if you have any questions about these requirements or about this form in general. Thank you and have a good day.